we brought together a group of panelists that we think represent a number of different perspectives, and we'll give you some different perspectives on what happened in Paris. Our breakout sessions are also from differing perspectives, but by all means, we're not covering all of them. So this is also an invitation to you to either help us in planning another one, plan another one of your own. Some people I know have announcements of other events similar to this that will be coming up, and we'll have announcements at the end of the evening to cover those. So just see this as a starting point, and we know that we have not covered everything by any means, but we'll give you a flavor that hopefully motivates you and gets you curious to hear more.
Thank you, Mindy. I also want to have the young people that are here, Andrew and Will, could you come up here? And then I saw a couple other people, young, usually under 30, but now I'm saying under 20. Andrew's in 9th grade, and Will, and they are part of a 3-person team that are interns with Cool Planet, and they're doing a special project. Andrew asked if he could lead one of the action breakout sessions on energy saving. So Andrew, you want to just say hi?
Yep, okay, so I'm Andrew, 9th grade at Southview Middle School, and then I'll just be talking about some easy ways you can save some energy and efficiency to make your home more efficient, just like small tips.
Great. And Will, do you want to say, why are you involved in this?
Well, Andrew and I are part of SPEG at Southview, and we both feel really passionate about saving our Earth so our kids and we can live to grow old on a planet that's not dying.
And I was going to ask the adults if you want to say something to them, but you just did. So thank you for being here. We really have a focus on our work of hearing the youth voice. We have 2 young people that now I call senior youth because they're millennials in their 25 to 30 range. But I knew Maria when she was almost a youth. And now I look to her and to the youth as major leaders in this movement. So we urge all of you to engage with your children and your grandchildren and perhaps your great-grandchildren. And what's this for? Okay, good. Yeah. So my life was changed when I learned about citizen voice. And I always like to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, but give me a microphone, and it was amazing. So Mindy was behind the camera with her iPhone 6, and I was out interviewing people, and you're going to see some of the slides now. Could you ask them to turn the lights, if they can turn them halfway down at the desk? I'm going to move over. Can you see? So here's our Minnesota picture for Paris. Mindy and I, the day after the conference, we did a day of sightseeing and touring. We opened up the banner under the Eiffel Tower, and within 5 seconds, we had police all over us. So we moved down a few hundred yards and we got our picture. I was glad they didn't take the banner, because this banner has been all over the world, from Copenhagen to Cancun to Durban. Next, please. So we were in Paris. Is someone working on the link? That's perfect. We were in Paris 2 weeks after the terrible tragedy, and we were watching the Parisians rebound. But everywhere, including Republic Square, this was the memorials that were there. It was very moving, and people were beginning to get back out and to feel their Parisian. They canceled the march that was scheduled for the day before the COP conference, but they did do a human chain of 3,000 to 4,000 people linked up with banners and singing, and it was quite joyful. We have videos of that, which you will not see tonight. The next day, instead of bringing in the world leaders at the very end, they brought in 64 world leaders. Maybe you can correct me on that, something like that. So President Obama was there, and we were watching all day long. We just watched and listened and said, very nice, very nice. Now let's see what we can do with these beautiful words and commitments. The other thing that usually doesn't happen is that the world's leading scientists came to the conference. James Hansen, who was the first person to testify before Congress in 1988, and has since become a big supporter of our work with Citizens Climate Lobby, because he feels without a price on carbon, you cannot move this forward. So James Hansen was there, and Catherine Hayhoe, evangelical Christian atmospheric scientist. Catherine says, don't talk about the science, talk about values. Connect with people on something that means something to them, and then you can deepen the conversation. She's incredible, and I encourage you to friend her on Facebook, because she'll say yes. And then, of course, Bill McKibben from 350 was there. Bill's been to Minnesota probably more times than most states. We first hosted him in Edina 7 years ago with the Will Steger Foundation. He was at a fracking workshop that we talked to, and keeping fossil fuels in the ground and working on moving people towards thinking differently about fossil fuels and renewable energy. So Bill's a tireless champion. He just sent a video out to people showing the rainstorm in his backyard in Vermont when it should be covered with snow. And he is a big-time skier. Everywhere we went, we heard people talking about pricing carbon. Putting a price on carbon and returning that money to households in our country, all over the world. It could be cap and trade, it could be cap and dividend. We talk about a fee and dividend where all the money goes back to Americans to stimulate the economy in a positive direction. This was a panel of France, Netherlands, UK, and England. I think the Asian man was, and it was really fascinating because the room was packed, and you can see Mindy was live streaming this man, and it was a small room, but it was crowded like this room now. And then in the middle of the week, Ellen Anderson, who will be one of our panelists this evening, organized as many of the Minnesotans to have dinner together. So we met. I pulled out the banner, of course, and we got a little picture. Next week, we're meeting with Tina Smith, J. Drake Hamilton, and probably a larger group at the Science Museum to really look at what's Minnesota's role in making this happen. We were lucky enough and to have institutions that feel committed to bringing this work to students. So McAllister had, I think, 10 students and 2 staff. And there were 8 students from the School of Environmental Studies in Apple Valley. The superintendent, because of the killings in Paris, had said, not safe, we're going to postpone the trip. The 5 kids that were 18 or over said, we want to go. They got their parents to chaperone. They were there for 2 weeks. Tonight they couldn't come because they have a fundraiser, but they're here in spirit, and they're awesome. They're just really incredible 18-year-olds. This is part of our group, Citizen Climate Lobby, which was Citizen Voice, and the Citizen Climate Engagement Network had 51 people in all on different teams doing different things. Some people in the blue zone, where the negotiators are doing the language and talking about what's actually going in the agreement, and then people in the green zone, where we were, which is where a lot of the activists were and a lot of the side events and a lot of the education. People would come from the blue zone over to the green zone and they say, oh, this is like a breath of fresh air. Because everybody there was positive and talking and engaging. So it takes everybody though. Here's Mindy with doing actually after an interview, and Claire doing the interview, and Mindy live stream or doing the video, which you'll see in a moment. We also brought your postcards. How many here wrote postcards that we carried? We had 297. I've been saying over 300, so Mindy, correct me. We have 297 cards, all hand-delivered to Jonathan Pershing, who used to work with the State Department. Now he's with the Department of Energy. The last day of the conference, we still had a big stack because we were reading them, getting that back to you on our website. We saw Joe and said, Joe, is there any chance you can get these to Jonathan Pershing? Joe goes over to the blue zone, goes to get coffee, and there's Jonathan. So not only is Jonathan look happy, we've actually built a really close relationship with him because we've been communicating with him since 2009 in Copenhagen. He was here for the Great Plains Institute fundraiser, and he talks about DC is in dire need of more engagement from citizens. He says the Department of Energy spends most of its time trying to figure out what to do with spent nuclear fuel rods. Like 20, 40, 80,000 people. I mean, I was flabbergasted. Tom Evans, Tom, where are you? Tom delivered cards to Jonathan in DC before the Paris conference with Claire, and then we got the rest of them to him in Paris. So here's the agreement, and we wanted to give you a primer on acronyms. So you hear about the COP21. The COP started 21 years ago. It stands for Conference of the Parties. The UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework on the Convention on Climate Change, that's the official title of the conference. And the INDC is the Intended Nationally Determined Contributions. That's hopefully the goals that will get us and these 196 countries that all agreed that we need to do better than 2 degrees. And there we go. We actually want to get towards a 1.5 degree rise in temperature as a ceiling. The world has approached 1 degree right now, so we don't even want to go to 1.5, but we're on the way to 4, 5, or 6 if we business as usual. If we take the INDCs of all the countries that were there and we added them together, it'll take us to about 3.6 to 4 degrees Celsius. So this is when you should go, oh, because that is no future at all for our young people and for us. But it doesn't have to be. The good news is that every 5 years, every country is expected to ratchet up their ambition and to revisit their commitments and say, we need to do better, we need to do better. And how is that going to happen?
If we push.
Exactly. It's going to take a loud, loud push and a lot of meetings and a lot of events like this to get new people realizing that what's at stake here, like the newspaper said, is the future of life. So you'll hear more details later. A video. This is what we saw every day when we got off the bus. Can you click that arrow, Mindy? This is pretty cool. Vertical access wind-generated tree. So these are spinning. What?
Just let me say. Since my new perspective for this whole time in Paris was by video, the way that I wanted to share it with you was by video. So this is a composite that gives you first kind of our experience in the green zone in the citizen engagement, civil society area. Lots and lots of walking. And there were, very mellow, very calm demonstrations, very meditative. As a matter of fact, this one was so meditative, it was quite a different kind of settle you down. They're very vocal demonstrations. We don't have a microphone.
That these are Revita bikes that are made in Belgium, and a really cool factory actually that's made with people who are disabled and also play people that workforce. It's a company run by 2 women, Patricia Simons and Katarina Verlaine, and Citizens Voice.
It's Steve Scadron and another Minnesotan that has made it big in life, the mayor of Aspen.
So firstly, my name is Bruce Patel. We started an expedition called E-Bike Africa, left from Glasgow on the 19th of November and arrived literally last night. This is
Annika Beckman from the National Physics
laboratory in the UK. We are
Hi, I'm Carmen de Santiago from the French agency Mission Publique.
We met two new friends from China. This is Luhan Lee. Welcome. Here's Don Peacerider from Alaska. Don.
My name's Chris Bentley. I'm the chairman and founder of the Pet Industry Sustainability Coalition.
My name is Brancy, and I work at the Alliance for Sustainable Colorado.
I am
Hi, I'm Sorun. I'm a student at the University of Iceland. I'm studying environment and natural resources. And I'm Mia. I'm from Canada, but I'm studying in Iceland with the same program.
And we ran into Kevin Hill. And we're with Jessica from Barbados.
I'm Nicole Anderson. I teach at Ramsey Middle School in St. Paul. I'm an ace. I'm 21. I'm a student here in Paris in environmental policy.
My name is Ariel Guzman. I'm from
My name is Kalam, and I'm from Tibet.
And Porter Fox with me, who's going to be on the panel for the I Am Pro Snow event. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Aurélien Tutzl. I am the Deputy Director of the Paris. I just finished a run from Tromsø, Norway to Paris, 2,500 kilometers of running over 4 months. So my name is Seth Itzkan, and I'm with a group called Soil for Climate.
So my name is Forrest Redlin. I'm a junior at Macalester College, and I'm here as a part of a larger student delegation, and I'm focusing on the power and influence of interfaith leadership in the climate negotiations.
Hello, my name is Mariah Cray. I'm also part of the Macalester student delegation, and I'm here learning about the role or the absence of health leadership in climate change policy.
And my name is Mitch Paquette, and I'm a senior at Macalester College. And here at COP, I'm looking at RED+, which is a forestry program.
I'm Jigmat Takpa. I'm from Ladakh, from the J&K of India.
So my name is Christian Mandelet, and I am a doctor in solar energy and in science. I'm working in Ladakh since 40 years about solar energy.
So my name is Kirsty Gagan, and I'm the director of a new environmental NGO called Energy for Humanity.
Jim, with our favorite scientist, Jim Hansen. Jim, what brings you here today?
Well, this is my first COP meeting.
Yes, my name is Sina. I'm from Togo.
Is with Espen from Sustainia.
Hi, I'm Leonta Spellman with Rainforest Partnership.
Hi, as you mentioned, I'm Stephanie, and I am from Calgary, Alberta.
My name is Seth Westcott. I grew up in rural Maine. I still live in Caribassa Valley at the Sugar Sea area. I've been a part of the U.S. snowboarding team for 17 years and on world tour for 20 years now.
Hi, I'm Holly Osowski. I'm a professor at the University of Minnesota Law School, and I'm also the faculty director of our Energy Transition Lab.
I am Hunter Lovins, president of Natural Capitalism Solutions.
I'm here with Ronnie Cummings, who's president of the Organic Consumers Association. And Ronnie, what do you think of tonight?
Well, it's been like everything in Paris the last 10 days, quite inspirational.
And I'm here with 3 students from the School of Environmental Studies.
Hi, I'm Robbie, and I came to get more educated about the foreign policy surrounding climate change and how that really works.
I'm Lily Boland, and I was particularly interested in the way that policymakers interact with researchers and how the information exchange works. I'm Morgan Murphy, and I'm interested in sustainable development and what places are doing
my name is Oliver Marchand. I have a background in atmospheric science. I've worked for the German and Swiss Weather Service, and I also have a background in writing portfolio management software. I've worked 10 years as head of IT of an asset management company.
Citizens' voice. Citizens' voice.
Good work.
Full interviews available on the Citizens Voice YouTube channel, plus others. So that gives you a small sample. If it seemed exhausting to watch that way, that's what we did for 2 weeks.
That's what we did all day today. And it was great because it really brought back all the feelings of what it was like to be there. I've been to 4 of these before, and never have I done a conference where I felt so useful because I was there for you and you were there for us. So if you didn't, I have cards that have all the information. We've got a Facebook page and citizenvoice.tv. If you need to be inspired, it's a great place to go because every one of those people have a story that is worth telling, just like your story is worth telling. Should we turn the lights back on?
Yep, and move on to our panel.
Yep. Okay. So how the evening is going to go, and it's going to be tricky because I think we have 102 people in the room, which is really incredible. We're going to have our panel. We're going to ask the panelists 2 rounds. First round, just to say who they are, what they do, what they did in Paris, a minute, 90 seconds. Then a second round that's going to be talking more about what's left behind now that Paris has happened, and what can a Minnesotan do, to push our country, our state, and really where things happen are in your own community. That's really the work that needs to be done. After that, depending on how much time they take, we're going to have Q&A for 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll be breaking up into 6 different groups. Kevin will be leading How to Keep It in the Ground in Minnesota with Maria and Mahir. Yes, okay. Rose is going to be talking about how to cook organic, not the planet, regenerative food farming and land use, and reversing global warming. Andrew will be talking about energy saving tips, things that you can do. Keiko from Linden Hills Power and Light will be talking about community solar. And I see Dana, and is someone else here too that has some background in that? Excellent. So we have 3 at Julie. We have 4. Solar is taking off. If you haven't been contacted 5 times by now, you're lucky. And then Joe Robertson will be talking about access to good, new participatory processes for policy making, pricing, carbon reporting on climate impacts. And Tom Hansen, who's not on the first panel, will be talking about the role of business in meeting the challenge of climate change. We now have Cargill, Best Buy, Target, and General Mills have all signed on to the President's initiative on climate change, with some of them very strong commitments and others not. So we need to get our businesses fully on board. So let's welcome our panelists.
I don't know who's sitting here.
Yeah. I see Joe. Rose. So, if you hear this noise, you want to softly wrap up. Ellen, who are you and what were you doing in Paris?
For 2 minutes?
90 seconds.
So I'm Ellen Anderson. I'm now executive director of the Energy Transition Lab, which is a center at the University of Minnesota that works on trying to transition our energy system to that future low carbon system that we all need, and that will enable a good quality of life and a strong economy for the future. And before that, I was in the state senate, and so I did a lot of public policy work. I was very happy to be in Paris, and you got a great taste of it from those videos. That was phenomenal, and it was a life-changing experience. I was there to really learn and study what was happening and to be able to communicate it back in Minnesota. I teach a climate policy class at the University of Minnesota, so partly it was about engaging students and letting them know. We actually wanted to bring our university students with us, but that got canceled sadly. So they weren't able to come, but a lot of faculty and researchers were able to go. And so I also did some communicating by writing op-eds and talking to a lot of media, etc. And so it was a life-changing experience to be there. We were very lucky to participate. I wasn't there the second week, so it would have been really amazing to be in that room like some other Minnesotans were at the very end when it actually happened. And so there's a lot I can say about the
details of that, but I don't think I have time.
You don't have another chance.
Well, am I done? You
No,
haven't taken it yet.
we're coming back.
Okay, hi, I'm Mahi. I'm a campus organizer with Untitled Chapter. Sorry? I didn't hear your name. Yeah, Mahiyar Suru. I'm a grassroots organizer with Unheard. We do advocacy work with college students across the state, specifically on environmental, economic, and racial justice work. And so I was invited through the work that I do with environmental justice, specifically in Minneapolis, to attend a conference in Paris on behalf of Gaia. It's the Global Alliance for Incineration Alternatives. So it's a group that globally works on this idea of zero waste and anti-incineration, specifically waste to energy facilities. So sort of a concept of the waste sector that isn't really and hasn't been talked about in climate negotiations in the past, and it is a really crucial part in addressing climate change. So I had the opportunity of meeting folks all around the world that are working on these same strategies and moving towards a zero waste future. It was so inspiring. I was also only there for a week as well, didn't get a chance to stay for the second week, but just had the pleasure of hearing so many inspiring stories of folks all around the world. In Philippines, the first country to ever ban incinerators. In Bangladesh, the first country to ban plastic water bottles.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay!
Inspiring and a really great way to show that grassroots community engagement is the best way that we can win a lot of these battles.
And was that your first UN conference?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first time, and it was life changing. It was just such an amazing opportunity to hear some of these inspiring victories. That just goes to show that, you know, they can do it, why can't we?
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Maria Langholz, and I was the delegation leader for a group called St, which is a US-wide group that has brought about 22-person delegations to the UN for the last 10 years, and we are mostly focused inside the negotiation, so we're in that inside blue zone that Paul was talking about at the beginning. And this year, the three things that we were primarily focusing on were decarbonization by 2050. So we need to get rid of fossil fuels, and we have to put a firm end date on that. And based on science, we're saying that's 2050. And our second thing that we worked on was loss and damage, and what that essentially means, and more broadly means, is how are we supporting people who already are being impacted by climate change. So this is not just about limiting future emissions and drawing down what we're burning, but it's also about how are we supporting those already being impacted through finance, through our immigration policies, through how we're transferring technologies, all sorts of things. And then the last piece was broadly about equity and human rights language in the text, and one of the main points that we focus on, and the group I work with has focused on for about the last 5 years, is a notion of intergenerational equity. And intergenerational equity is the idea that future generations need to be considered when making decisions about our futures. And just to note that that was a success, and that phrase of intergenerational equity did end up in the final text from Paris.
Do you get a sense of our leadership in the future? We're going to be in good hands. We just have to get through these next 10 years. Rose.
Hi, my name is Rose Welton. I work with Organic Consumers Association, which is a national organization, but we're based here in Minnesota. And we've also started a project that's international called Regeneration International. We were in Paris and actually rented a youth hostel and brought 80 people from around the world, all focused on talking on how food, farming, and land use is something that has to be the part of every country's climate plan. The solutions are incredible, and it's one that has often not been talked about, but the French agricultural minister proposed this. I don't know if everyone's heard about that. It's called 4 per thousand, and it's the idea of drawing down the carbon from the atmosphere, sequestering it into the soil where it used to be before we released it with all the agricultural and forestry methods that we're using now. So it's very exciting that things progress beyond what we ever imagined, with 25 countries signing on. to this, and so anyway, it's talking about food farming and land use in relation.
And what does the four mean?
It's for every 1,000 parts of carbon, we need to bring down 0.004 from the atmosphere into the soil, and that can be very easily done. 2/3 of the carbon is in the soil, and 1/3 in the atmosphere. So it's this disruption and understanding. And this also, what's exciting is we can bring it down to the consumer level. People can understand the grazing practices. You know, that's as large. There's more grazing land than there is cropland. So this rotational grazing, consumers can begin to understand. If I'm buying grass-fed steak that's almost always is rotational graze, that is the climate trust. So people really need to understand. Okay, it's more expensive, but it's what we have to do. So it's a very positive, exciting possibility. It's what we're going to have to do, because the agreements that came to an end are not enough. I mean, we have to.
And our ocean is quite full of carbon now, so our soil is really, we need to stop treating
My name is Kevin Whalen. I'm the executive director of 350, which is a state offshoot of the 350.org that's all around the world. And I was in Paris. If there's a blue zone for the inside, green zone for the organizations from Steak Arizona, and I don't know what you call the rest of the red zone. 7 billion people on Earth try to get a word in edgewise about what happened. I was really there to be part of civil society and outside actions that were intended to pressure the governments and the corporations that are inside writing the deals. It's an interesting space. I had not been to a COP before. I'm kind of new to being an environmentalist as my work. So it's real fluid, sort of back and forth. People are in these different zones. But so the stuff I participated in was changed in a lot of ways from what was planned. There was supposed to be a big march, maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of people, that was banned in the wake of terrorist attacks. And so I got to participate with a lot of groups that were figuring out how to do moving and meaningful public action, a chance where space was very restricted by martial law imposed after the terrorist attacks. I had the mood of the country, honestly. The people in the coalition planning outside actions told us they had all lost a friend or a friend of a friend in the attacks the week before. So it changed what people wanted to do as well as what they were allowed to do. So on the day that the big march was supposed to happen, Paul showed some pictures of that. Earlier that morning, Maria brought me out at 5 in the morning. First day off the plane, I got a text saying, Kevin, put out the shoes that people, so, an organization called the Vaz got 17,000 pairs of shoes and put them out right where we would have marched, which turned out to be a striking image that in some ways was like more novel than another picture of a march.
The shoes of the Pope and the President of France.
Yeah. So their creative actually took place in a group of people that are working to get museums and cultural spaces to cut ties to the fossil fuel industry, like that. I've been trying to separate and take away their moral license. We did an action at the Louvre where we went and there's all kinds of security and stuff. We got umbrellas with letters painted on them and stuck them in our pockets. And then all popped them out and spelled out fossil-free culture and a song and a dance. That's a video. I was the letter R in culture, so if you have seen it.
I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm the Global Strategy Director, and I've been leading the Pathway to Paris project for the last 15 months or so. And so I was with our team members like Mindy and Paul, Claire, and others. We had the Citizens Voice team that you saw the videos from. That was one thing. We had a team of global strategy interns, some of whom have done heroic work already by the age of 20 or 21, changing the text of global agreements, working in the UN system, starting their own NGOs. I was there for the launch of something called the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, to global policymaking bodies, governments, businesses, NGOs, and intergovernmental agencies all sit together as peers to drive carbon pricing into every country's climate policies within 5 years. Launched the Citizens Climate Engagement Network officially. It has a governance strategy that will be building in a vibrant coalition of NGOs and UN agencies. Had a high-level dialogue where business leaders, experts in law and economics came together to talk about how you can accelerate climate action from outside the process. One of my roles was also trying to coordinate the flow of information between people who are inside the process. A lot of times, people are in their one group and they don't see what's going on right next to them. And so I was to help make sure that those connections. Telling a story, like Ellen was saying, writing. I did some writing about what was going on to help people contextualize the news that was coming in. And one piece of news, over the 15 months of Pathway to Paris, our team worked on core principles for pricing carbon that work in any carbon pricing scenario. We want it to be real and honest and effective. And those principles made their way into the World Bank's principles that were released in September, and actually also made their way into the Paris text. Article 4, there's actually a provision requiring no double completeness, coherence, transparency, etc. That changes the meaning of the other provisions that would relate to carbon pricing. So,
thank you. You earned a little bit of your credit on the time, but you did a very nice job. So, round 2. What was your primary learning or takeaway from COP21? And what are the key actions for Minnesotans as a result of the agreement in Paris, depending on your perspective? So your main primary takeaway from the conference, and what are key actions that you see that these people can do to move the conversation forward? And I think we'll just go as you're ready. We won't go in order, but who would like to start off? And you have 2 minutes this time.
I would love it. I'm
Maria.
Great. So, as a reminder, I've been working with a group of 22 youth, coordinating that group, and I say youth, that was in the age older, so we're to Apollo now, it was 20 to 27-year-olds. And for me, I was at the time I did international policy in any substantial way. And for me, as an organizer, the main takeaway for me is that honestly, we just can't build any more infrastructure. We cannot build any more fossil fuel infrastructure if we are going to stay below the temperature limit that we're going to act. And as has been said by a few people here, the agreements and the commitments made aren't going to get us anywhere near there. But one, those commitments don't come into effect until 2020, so there's still time to push those commitments to be more ambitious at the national level. But also when it comes to domestic policy and the decisions that the State Department, like the Clipper, are going through Northern Minnesota, we need to be able to that the decisions that are being made by petition, even by a lot of organizations, we need to be pushing the narrative that we cannot any more infrastructure. Not, oh well, there's this pipeline, we need a better. We can't commit to having any infrastructure that has extended time. Because if we're going to stable most models I've seen say that 2 degrees means the United States needs to be at 0, and not that's what everyone would need to be, but the U.S. has to by 2030. And to stable 1.5, which negotiators are deciding ideal below 1.5, 2025, complete decarbonization in the United States. So to make that, we need to be transitioning quickly, and that means no more hits and drawing down the projects that are in progress and ensure that when power plants are for the 16 that we have One is our whether we're engaged with our pushing in for the implementation plan and being also with a power our
And you want to be that you want to write that. Who would like to? Okay.
So, remind zero waste future. I would say the number is a lot of things from that conference. It's literally just like possibilities to really create particular based on. It's just, I mean, you look at like the Philippines that they're waste energy, right? They're putting waste in the atmosphere, they're taking it away. It's more facilities, taking, even having these sort of jobs, find folks that need jobs, known as waste, right? But don't or room trash and find things that they can take out of, they can reduce, reuse, and bring back without waste. I mean, with that as well, I suppose that sort of ties into like what can we do as Minnesotans, and specifically what can Minneapolis folks do. I know a lot of folks in this space right now are from Minneapolis, and a lot of actually from the Linden Hills communities. Specifically in Minneapolis right now, I call that for folks. Recycling contract in the city in Minneapolis is up for recreation everywhere. You as Minneapolis residents have a choice to move away from the same organization, waste management that has been fueling these waste to energy incinerators like the Hertford incinerator, and instead invest in a local organization called Eureka Recycling. Eureka operates the recycling and waste management right now in St. Paul, and imagine if we were to move that over to Minneapolis and have Minneapolis residents have the option of an organization that not only is focused on the zero waste future, but an organization that sees their work as well and respects their own community, and even go to events and ask the folks in the community if they would like their event to be zero waste, not because they're getting paid to do it, but just because they care, like they care about the future of our planet. So, actually, folks, anyone would like the phone number of Linnea Palmasiano. She's a part of the Department of Education Public Works Committee. She's your member if you live in this community. She's the vice chair of that committee, and she's one of the people that will have that decision of whether or not we have to be voted. There's only 5 other members of the city council. Yes, I don't want to waste time on that because there's 6 community council members on that public committee. It's Kevin, Linnea Palmasiano, Campbell Morgan, Long Gang, Elizabeth Linden, and Lisa Bender. And any of you are in that or just want to call them Minneapolis resident, please come to me after this panel. I have all their phone numbers. And I urge you, because on February 2nd, there will not be an opportunity for an open hearing. A lot of times, contracts go on where public opinion doesn't really have a voice. So the only thing that we can really get this done is to just call council members and tell them want to see your way.
And let's see right now how we're doing this group. How many people do organics recycling at home right now? Hands?
That's wonderful.
That's most of you. How many would like it, but they don't have the infrastructure in the community, and you'd like to get it there? So you might want to consider going to the and talk more about that. These are big issues, and everything is a resource. If we think of all of our trash, all of our recycling, those things are valuable. And we can fix things and we can use things. And if you go to one of these conferences and you meet these rag pickers and the people, it's inspiring to see what they do with so little.
Last thing, I'm so sorry. I know I'm totally out of time, but just moving towards the zero waste future and working. We we can one day hopefully shut down that HERP incinerator in Minneapolis. Because we're tired of the community there, and it's just not fair. So.
And I'm looking for Tim Brownell, but I don't think he's in the room. I say, go here and meet this woman. You know Tim? He's the president of Eureka.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
I'll make I'll make sure that he has a coffee with you. All right, someone at this table. Okay, all right, we're going to wrap up that table.
So, it's kind of take away from Paris, and it connects to. To me, the most amazing thing is you had 196 countries, virtually in the world there, with the same big idea in mind. And what really happened there is what I would call normalization. We now have an agreement and sort of a cultural norm that was articulated not just by environmentalists, not just by presidents, but by a whole range of people, by the business community. There were 1,000 mayors there, including Chris Coleman from St. Paul, who committed to 100% renewable. People from the sector, we had business community people, small island nations, and so we have this kind of agreement that is not just in the written agreement, but this agreement and this understanding that we are going to rapidly decarbonize our world. And everyone, and we're sort of in a bubble here in the United States where you're not hearing that very much. And so I think that we need to normalize that as a regular conversation and debate and dialogue, no matter where you are and in what setting and in what sector and what part of your life and in different aspects of life, that just needs to be accepted. And that's connected to the idea of momentum and kind of peer pressure and organizing. I have to say that I had an opportunity to run into Jonathan Pershing. You were talking about him before, and I ran into him right in the middle of, or towards the end of the first week, right before I left. And I told him that day that France and Germany had agreed that we need to put 1.5 degrees into the agreement, and that was kind of unheard of at the beginning of the week. And Jonathan, he's a great guy, as you said, but he was very skeptical. And I said, if the U.S. come around, the U.S. is part of a high ambition and developing countries and powerful big economies of the world, they were all part of this group that made that be in the agreement, that there's a very strong commitment to get towards 1.5 degrees. It's not enough. The agreement doesn't do it enough by itself. But I think, again, it showed momentum, and it showed that just in the time that we were in Paris, the pressure of all of the people and all the voices changed the outcome. Oftentimes, you see the political process, you don't believe it feels right. It's like our room somewhere, and our voices don't matter, but they mattered even in that biggest of all kinds of political meetings of all time. That's, you know, probably the biggest, most historical gathering of world. And at that time, the voices of ordinary citizens from all different places and walks of life made a difference. So again, keeping that momentum, ratcheting up ambition, it just has to be a mantra that we stick with and continually. And I think we need to hold all of our political leaders. That's my number one thing, is make sure that we hold the leaders to that and talk to them about it and make sure that they're repeating that. And it's normal. That's part of our expectations for our state, our cities, and so get involved in the legislature. Don't forget elections matter a lot in terms of that we move down that right path. So,
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Time for another survey. What we find in working with legislators is the most effective way to get your word out is our letters to the editor. How many have been published in the last year? A letter to the editor or an op-ed piece? Remarkable. Now, that could be a next step for some of you. It is easy to get published in your local paper. in the Sun Current. How many of you are here because of the Southwest Journal article today? Hands up. That's really great. So consider doing that, and tomorrow with our Citizen Climate Lobby meeting in the art room in this building, we will be writing letters. Welcome 2016 as the year that we turn the corner on climate solutions by pricing carbon. So thank you for that opportunity. It's kind of fun to do this. Okay, who's that? Now we're at a new table. Who wants to go?
Well, I guess our takeaway, well, for one thing, is the understanding about restorative agriculture and farm and land use is further along than we ever expected. For the last 5 years, there's been, food activists like Rodale, soil activists talking about this, but there really hasn't been very news. When the French agriculture minister proposed this and actually brought scientists together, had the different countries in here listening to this, who many of them came to Paris, had never even heard of this possibility for sequestering carbon. So, I mean, we could not believe that 25 countries had signed on in that short time we were there. Amazing to see what can happen in a short time. So, one thing that we need to do as Minnesota, the U.S. is still not signed on. We're working now on a meeting in March. We're going to have a press conference with the agricultural ministers, try to get them from those 25 countries and USDA people to try to encourage the U.S. and other countries to sign up this as well. And I think here in Minnesota, we can, try to awareness of this to our legislators. And Minnesota's obviously agriculture is pretty important here, and we've been talking about things like no-till and land use. There's a huge impact that we could all have. So keeping educated on these issues and this for anyone who wants to see it. I brought a lot of literature. So that's it's just keeping forward and remaining active, and things like the compost we're talking about. Wow, the difference in San Francisco right now. Every single household has to recycle it. Will they get fined if they don't?
Yep. Yeah, they actually, right, they haven't done the finding yet. Right now, they actually have folks that go and if they see someone that's not composting, they'll write a little love note and they'll come back, not even joking, and they'll come back the next day and educate the family about why it's important to compost and what can be. Amazing.
And there's a story with that, with the San Francisco City compost. They went out and put it on some grazing lands in Marin County, and they're measuring the carbon and seeing unbelievable rates of sequestration in that soil. And then you have the country of Finland has already offered every single farmer in the whole country free tests to test their soil carbon. If they increase the carbon that goes into their soil, they will get price supports for that. So I mean, it is so exciting. So I guess part of it too is we're looking. We've always been involved in the food movement. There's a huge food movement in this country that's a bit separate from the climate movement and the forestry movement. And I think we all would have to work together on this to bring about the solution for the climate, which is the most important issue.
One of the side events that I went to in Paris, the one that had the biggest youth turnout, and this is just mine, was the one with Regeneration International. That's the movement that the kids really get, that their yard, their food, their animals, everything. Can you imagine corn and soybean farmers becoming carbon farmers? Getting paid for it, and maybe they have a couple wind generators. It's really that kind of thinking that's going to get us to make the change, but it has to work for the economy and it has to work for jobs. So we've got to make those connections for the people who have to make these transitions, and that's a tough one. Kevin or Joe?
Good enough. All right, so Kevin Whalen again, and my main takeaway, there's a lot of different accounts at the end trying to evaluate whether or not Paris was a success, and totally, my Facebook feed was full of people in completely different ends of the spectrum. I'm totally euphoric. Like, this is all a lot of crap. There's a song lyric, everything changed, absolutely nothing changed. That's sort of the takeaway, right? So the world now has a 1.5 degree warming warming goal and a set of promises to get to 3.5 degrees. So in some ways, everything is still the same we had the day before Paris. We need to move governments to change their policies to rapidly decarbonize. We need to back the power of the fossil fuel industry that's trying to slow down the transition to their own profit just long enough that they get another 10, 12, making lots of money, and the whole world lost to all people and creatures. But there is a change, right? The whole world agreeing on a new norm, that Ellen said, is a big thing. The argument that was a radical argument 10 years ago, or even 6 months ago in some ways, is now the official policy of all world governments. So the fight is to close the gap in that promise and all the policies that our city, state, country are. And so one thing we can do in Minnesota is try to have our state, which was at least once on the leading edge towards more renewable energy. Ellen, as much as anyone, I mean, you know, lots of people in this room have worked on it. But we've been sort of slipping back, right? So the commitments got a little worse last year. It's worse still this year. We need to be talking, you know, realistically about what the state needs to do. So the easy version of that this year is that the governor should pass a strong, or propose a strong, just power plan, create good jobs for people and communities. And this way, they just stay away from it and not stop them from doing that. Be easy. And then I think we need to be, you know, a bigger and bolder movement to have our state proposed goals that are realistic. That might include talking about a price on carbon at the state level, since the world and country seems to be getting away from it and bringing in more people and communities into our movement. One other reflection, my other song there, you can't always get what you want. Try sometimes you get what you need. And the power of stating clearly what is or isn't realistic is pretty important. It's one of the fun things in Paris is you stand next to people who are more famous and you know, hang around, right, because you're all there at this thing. So at the big march, there was sort of a big march going on in the streets as the agreement was being announced. So I saw Bill McKibben was there from 350 doing an interview. He said, you know, it's kind of funny because the people, the very serious people inside during the announcements are all playing games with the numbers, right? Like we're going to have commitments that get to 3.5, come back later and make those commitments go down. But that's not really how, like, science works, right? You can't do more, so you come back and do it. Whereas people in the streets are talking about the science, that if you are going to stay at 1.5 degrees, it means something very basic that indigenous communities actually introduced to these talks 2 or 3 rounds ago, which was the notion of keeping it in the ground. And all the policy mechanisms are different ways to incentivize and regulate to not dig up and burn the oil, gas, and coal that we have. And that is the bottom line. You need to be able to articulate that. So, strongly agree with Maria. There's no realistic then about building a new system for exporting. We can do a lot of export fuel. And any policy that goes with that, whether it's building additional solar or credits or prices or anything else, is not realistic, because those are all only useful if they're policy mechanisms to our economy off of the fossil fuels that we're using. It's going to require a big political movement, and it's going to require big social changes to do that. But I think the one thing I saw in Paris is that it started with indigenous communities, largely common indigenous communities, but has spread to face the science and talk realistically about what we do, and then make the political calculations or build the movement we need to make the political changes. Okay.
Comments on that. Coming from the 350, where I got involved in this comment, how many people in this room are active in 350 right now? So how many are working on divestment? And I think the numbers are in the trillions of dollars now of divested portfolios.
Yeah, something like
3.4 trillion dollars. So if you want your money to fund the future that you believe in, talk to Emily, or I'm sure there are many more. And how about pipeline issues? Tar Sands, who's working on that issue in this room. So around your friends there, these are 50 is famous for action, and they get a lot done, and they're all world. When they do an event, they do 200 events in this country, and then they do 800 events around the world. So it's the place that attracts a lot of people who want to get work done.
And just to plug the big mobilizations in May, we're doing action under the name of Break Free from Fossil Fuels, and there'll be 12 huge mass mobilizations around the world. One, which is undecided where it will be within the United States, but at the same time, there'll be other actions, distributed actions happening across the world. So sure, there'll be one happening with them in 350, so if you want to be involved with that, and it's a really exciting moment because that's one of the first culminations of their Keep It in the Ground work.
Thank you. And that's the importance of signing in today, because all of this information will be sent out on our website, but you need to make sure we have your email, phone number, all that information. I see that, Mindy. So where we're at right now, we're 4 minutes to the end of kind of before the workshops, and we haven't even got to your questions, so we're about 15 minutes behind. I want to make sure to give you some time, and we also have cards that people could write questions down that don't get to them. We could answer them online, but now we're going to hear from Joe Robertson from CCL.
So I just want to say one thing very quickly at the beginning, which is that Article 6 of the United States Constitution says the ratified treaty is the supreme law of the land. It equals the Constitution in its legality. The 1992 Climate Convention is a ratified treaty. It mandates that we avoid dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate. That's why the United States doesn't have to ratify the treaty. It never has. The Paris Agreement is an expression of that treaty, and what it does is it now establishes in a global agreement that everyone in the world will cooperate. That's what the Kyoto Protocol did not succeed in doing. That's what the 92 Convention itself did not succeed in doing. It mandated action by some countries, but not all. So within that, we now have this 1.5 degree target that is law. All 196 parties have made that convention law by redefining the dangerous threat. So even though we aren't there yet, ratcheting up ambition over time means that we can actually get there if we ratchet quickly enough. My big takeaway was that subtle differences are hugely powerful. So the text doesn't have to say we will re-engineer the entire global financial system so that it no longer does climate damage. But a lot of people in Paris were working for exactly that. And there are about 100 different places in the text where the right things have been put in place so that within 5, 10, or 15 years, it'll be very difficult to make major institutional investments if you're still investing in fossil fuels. So subtlety is very important, and the Paris Agreement has captured that in a way where a lot of different little pieces are actually going to prove a very strong. One word that relates to carbon pricing principles, for instance, is consistency. And what that word means is that in putting in motion your national climate strategy, you can't on the one hand say, we're going to incentivize renewables and try to get off fuels, and then on the other hand say, we're also going to give $1 billion to coal companies. That's inconsistent. So this is now a global agreement that says that that 92 law is expressed in this way where it is not appropriate to be so inconsistent. And now nations that are going to lead in that effort can force other nations to abide by that new standard. And I think the action, I mean, first of all, in the realm of subtlety, conversations matter. The words people share matter. The 1.5 thing really was peer pressure. The day that France and Germany announced that, the United States announced it would give $30 million to islands that would go under. $30 million. Miami Beach is going to spend $5 billion to keep the water out. Tiny. Not a nation, right? So there was a lot of pressure once 1.5 industrial country standard for the U.S. to say we're on board with that. We're strong enough to do that too. The action I think everyone can get involved in is be engaged. The biggest threat to this whole thing is people not engaging. If we abandon the people that represent us so that they're just hanging out in rooms where no one else is there, and no one else is there saying you have to do the optimal things, then they might not do it because they might not feel they can, might not know how, they might not be able to connect with the people that can push them harder. So you just have to engage in whatever way you can with the people who are going to represent you and make decisions on your behalf. Listen to them, even if they don't agree with you, and try to figure out why they think and talk they do, and then try to figure out where your values can push them in the right direction.
Being a citizen of Edina and on the Energy Commission, I'm so proud that two of my council members are here. Mary Brindle, could you stand up and just give a little wave? And Bob Stewart. And the other three aren't here because I didn't call them. I know that Mayor Hovland would have come, and I just didn't have enough time to get out to that. So, any other elected officials in the room? Okay, next year that needs to change. We need to start running for office and really being the leaders that we want to see. I do want to acknowledge my friend Asad Aliwet from Somalia. He ran for city council in Eden Prairie and came in 5th place for 4 seats or 6th place. He missed it by just a few votes. I met Assad when he was 8 years old. I taught him how to play frisbee in the refugee camps in Somalia. And we met at the Green Partners recycling meeting, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I said, "Are you from Mogadishu?" And he said, "No. Aren't you that guy who used to blow bubbles?" And throw that lake thing. So I was a Coal Planet board member, and it's my best small world story. So really will share it, and thank you for coming. With your 7 children, I have no idea how you can do it. Okay, your turn. We're going to give you at least 10 minutes. If the question is good, we'll make you keep doing it. If you would stand up, say your name, your neighborhood, and then ask your question either to a specific person or generally, and then we'll take it. Please, no long stories, although I'm not the one to say that. Who would like to ask the first question? Please stand up and model perfect behavior.
Hi, Steve Blake. I'm from the Linden, and I'm so surprised I don't meetings like this that there's never mention about population. It seems like carbon is the problem, but the number of carbon consumers is too, and it's such a big issue back in the 70s, and you never hear about it anymore. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Elephant in the room.
You know, I think the thing with population, it just comes down to the point of educating. I mean, right, like you're talking about the population of folks that have a lot of carbon. So I think it's educating, telling them the importance of why they should why they should move towards more transportation, right? Instead of like using cars. Even just like it's very easy. But I think, yeah, one thing that comes with that is education. If we've lost it, I would say the public. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's number. It's like the car, you know, made all these improvements, and they just spent it on the car. So all the improvements we could make on them could be eaten up by certain types of consumers in certain countries. And I love kids.
I'm going to expect that a lot of the consuming is happening in countries with fairly low population. Like in the United States, we're not growing populations as there are a lot of other countries, but we're also the equivalent of having huge families. So I think for me, this is not about numbers. This is about consumption. We're going to talk about like specifically individual contributions. I was going to say about what smart people would say.
But the challenge in agriculture the big creator of carbon are men. So that's a real.
But I'd like to point out that this regenerative agriculture is the answer for that, and that we can turn that around completely, where agriculture is what's going to help save the planet, draw it down, and it's going to have the bonus of self-poverty, because we're going to be talking about dealing with small farmers and So I mean, this is it's not just about drawing carbon. This is actually changing the whole way the world is, supporting small farmers so they can support population that they have. And so I think, you know, if we look about it and say, okay, how do we make the earth an abundant place for the people who are living here now, the population that's here, the large population, we can do that. And that's what's so exciting about regenerative agriculture. It's not, if we do it correctly, it's not going to be
we could go a long time on this one, but I remember in my days of working on hunger and poverty and talking about India and Africa, people have a lot of kids because a lot of kids die. And the biggest population growth is in Africa. So let's put some focus on, you know, our friends and families in bringing in the right kind of agriculture. When people see their kids living, that's a good start.
This is a very
I know, you've got to say it.
I do. One of the issues I have about investing too much of our energy in, like, I think a great idea in a lot of ways. I also want to be clear that when talking about the fossil fuel industry and about the impacts of the fossil fuel industry, it's not just about climate. And while agriculture has the potential to solve some parts of it, it does not have the ability to reduce the impact of refineries and the control of the fossil fuel industry on politics. And like, yes, that's a part of the transition, but I just we also stop burning fossil fuels and need to figure out the ways that do support in making that. So
one of the best ways, when you find values to talk about climate change, health is the one value that goes across everybody. If you want to talk about something that people will listen to, talk about kidneys, talk about lungs, talk about breathing and health. And healthy people are happy. That was a good question. So I encourage everybody to bring that question up. And Karen Schrag is the person you want to talk to. She's my one activist friend that says, if you don't talk about population, you're in the wrong ballpark. So I want to start bringing that in. Another question. Okay.
I'm Dana, over from Minneapolis. I have a similar that no one on it. I was just wondering, agriculture is a product in Paris. I know there's a lot of information out there about how fossil fuels or water contamination or what to do, all these kind of environmental things that are happening from even to your point, Rose, you know, raising farm animals differently. There's not enough room in the United States on the planet to have food ethics. So I'm wondering.
Well, it's addressed quite a bit in talking about the plan for there's ways. I think, you know, no one can eat the amounts of meat that people are eating. Right? Everyone has. But the idea of people cutting, using there's models of regenerative poultry where, you know, you would have where they're all living outside. Say, for example, we're working on one right now in Mexico where there's planted 900 olive trees, and that will be sunflowers and a traditional milfoil with the chickens under that, and that's 1,500 eggs a day. So it's pretty large, but it's done on a scale. It'll take about 2 acres to do that. So models of things like this, and looking like the Norwegian government gave a grant for 30 of these in Guatemala. There's prototypes of things that can be done, and you're actually, you know, this is something that can be done with animals, but it's, you know, probably more likely that people are going to have eggs and milk and much less meat, and this part of raising cattle, you're kind of going back and modeling with the caribou, with the buffalo. It's like if you look at beavers, all these animals that were on the earth were so important as a way of like engineering the earth and bringing it back into balance. So animals are going to be a really important part of how we try to reverse climate change, and people's diet consciousness as consumers. You know, that's one of the big things of the Cook Organic, not the Planet campaign. Every person should never put another bite of factory farm food in their mouth again, because they've got to understand that that is damaging in ways that they can't imagine. The climate, not to mention their health and everything else. So, yeah, I think that.
And locally, we are going to have an Allen Savory Hub in Redwood. Our friend Red Hart is getting grazing animals, and he's going to demonstrate that when you let animals naturally graze and use their waste, it helps to regenerate the soil, things grow better, good way of stopping desertification. And I've even heard, and this, I don't know much about it, is a major grazing program in the tundra to help to keep the methane from escaping. So these are big things. Bob.
I'm Bob Gruber from the South Cornelia neighborhood. I have a question. Ellen, you talked about normalizing cultural norm to decarbonize the world. Do you have any thoughts about how do we integrate that into our political process with our legislators and legislative leaders right now?
That's a great question. How do we do that in our real life, very divisive political world that we live in? The first thing that really comes to mind when you talk about changing cultural norms, to me, is the whole movement in the United States for marriage equality. And think about a transformation in public opinion that happened over the space of just a few years. I mean, there were lots and lots of years building up to that, where we had major political battles in the legislature over that issue, and constitutional amendments, elections won and lost, and elections fought those issues. But it was a period of time where a combination of factors really tipped things over very quickly. And I think if you look at the campaign that in Minnesota, the Minnesota Uniting for All Families, it was all about conversation. That was the strategy that they came up with. That seemed so simple, but it was amazingly effective because it took it from being a political, divisive issue to a one-on-one, talking to your neighbor, talking to your friends, talking to people in your congregation about your family and what it means to you and your family and loved ones. And it started to change things. I think that, along with a population, a generational shift, changed things. And so that's not necessarily the magic formula for any kind of social movement, but it's very instructive. And so I part of it is really, I mean, when I say normalizing, I mean, seriously, I think it's about people are afraid to say, political elected officials might be afraid to say, yes, we need to decarbonize, yes, we need to get to 100% renewable energy, to say things that might sound outlandish, because 10 years ago it was unthinkable in the political process to support such things. I mean, I can tell you very detailed stories about in 2000, from about 2000 to 2004, Minnesota legislature, the idea that we could get 10 or 20% of our electricity from renewable resources. I can't tell you how many people said that's politically impossible, that's technically unfeasible, it'll cost too much, it just won't work. And now we've changed, it's been a revolution, and people understand that high amounts of renewable energy are real possible. And so you have to have the willingness to say change is possible and to envision a future, and you have to see examples where that can be done in these communities to demonstrate what's possible. So there's lots of different ways to get there. And again, you need to have those conversations with elected officials and say, this is real, it's not just me, it's the whole world knows this, and you need business leaders to go speak at the elected leaders, religious leaders, the people who and influence decision makers.
Thank you.
Victor Hugo said, nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And in order to create that conversation, we need to provide political cover for some of the people who are a little bit, and I don't want to name names, but if you're in the 3rd district, we have a wonderful member of Congress that totally he gets climate change. He's met with Paul Douglas. It's just not safe. So I bet that, there are a few Republicans in this room, and I know that you all know many. It really is in. We're going to sit around and talk about what we know. We need to be talking outside the comfort zone where we usually spend our time. And that's when you get older, you realize there is nothing left to do. except doable things. So, you know, let's get more young people in here and let's show them that we're not afraid, because they're not. We need to do that. Now, I'm getting signals that we have to stop. So I want to be democratic about this. How many people have burning questions? Hi, Larry. Burning there, burning there. So here's what we could do. Usually when we break into groups, what do people do? They leave. We don't want you to leave, because at the end of the night, we want to hear what you're committed to and what you're going to do tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Because the Vikings, it's on Sunday. So you actually could do it tomorrow. But I want to have more engagement so you can start interacting with these folks. I know Ellen has to leave, right? You got your purse in your lap, and if you need to leave, you may go. And Mindy, I want to make sure that people have a chance to get together about solar, about Andrew's energy saving tips, because this is really important, mostly for you to meet each other and not to leave and escape. We'll let Ellen and Andy escape, because let's give her a hand. Thank you. You guys are committed to staying here, right? Yeah, and we have to be out of here by 9, so we have 59 minutes. My suggestion, if this is okay with my partner, is we do 1 or 2 more burning questions, and then we break into small groups if you guys will say you won't escape. Yeah? We don't want to lock the door. That's not appropriate. Does that sound like a good plan? 2 more questions, and then most of you will stay. And if anyone leaves, a lot of peer pressure. Yeah, and Joe, we'll let Joe respond, and then we'll go to the other 2 questions.
I was just going to say quickly about what can you say to elected officials. There's nothing you can say that somehow tricks someone into changing their mind within that moment. It's a conversation, and it has to be an ongoing conversation. Any good conversation you've ever had, there's back and forth, there's a variety of ideas, there's the interesting thing that happens when you learn from each other. And that has to be how you approach it, or we won't get the people who don't already want things to find. But by having those conversations, you can help them know that the decision has already been made, that the world is going to decarbonize. The question is, are we going to be doing it fast, taking the right amount of money from it, and building the right society?
Thank you. Okay, in the red. Thank you.
That's why I wore red tonight.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, neighborhood, and we've been talking a lot of like more of a permanent question, and that is, I'm suggesting that this group, this organization, reach out to Black and because there's so many things in their movement, and there's so much energy, and there's so many young people, and if we don't get it right now, I've been listening to people all week, and there's been so much good going on about the intersection interest is just so many things we could just go and very big, but the time is right now, and it's the tipping point, and it's the zeitgeist, and I think it's all full right now. Wherever you are, reach out to whoever, and that's my question.
Thank you. Is there a response from the audience around that? Before we move on to another question, a response to her?
I just want to agree with the
Stand up, and who are you and where do you live?
And I remember this summer the Minnesotans big meeting at the state capitol, and one of the speakers that I was talking about were mother miners. Right, they were systematically basically targeting Black neighborhoods at dumping ground. Incredibly dangerous talk, and how we're just dying, like, and like environmental is yeah, we can make science because like it helps for native matter, land
stolen still or line. This is, yeah, that as a reason happened.
We would love to bring this conversation to other communities, and that will require you to open up that area. Emily.
I'm Emily, I live in East Harriet, and I just want to comment that Mr. Whalen was instrumental in already making connection with Neighborhoods Organizing for Change. I went to the event at whose house was Marion Moore's house last summer, and I was so impressed with that connection between MN 350 and Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, and it was a fundraiser that was going to benefit both organizations. And Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, Anthony Newby is the one that supported the Black Lives Matter in a commentary in the Star Tribune. I say supported, talked about how when the protesters were shot, the police department didn't really help them. And my feeling about that was they should have been able to go to the policemen and say, there are people here that are threatening us, and the police should have been supporting them when they were peacefully protesting.
I just want to add one thing too, with that, especially with what happened that day. There was a lot of conversations with Mayor Hodges that talked about one of the reasons why they wanted the protesters to leave the site, fire coming from the campfire ground. It is a little hypocritical to talk about maybe air quality as a result of those fires when the PERC garbage incinerators right down the road, primarily a location where communities of color and low incomes are subjected to that poor. So just as a few of us in this crowd that are working on justice work, Black Lives Matter is a part of it. So you'll see more ahead with that.
A couple quick things off of that. So there are. So one, I think you're absolutely correct. So besides connecting as organizations or individuals who comes, I think Black Lives Matter showed the template for what you have to do to needle on policy in this country, right? So the different opinion people who break down what people think about climate into different categories or something, say there's about 20 million people in this country who really get climate change and are ready to take action and if asked would do something deeply meaningful tomorrow. So that's not most people, which is a problem. It's a lot of people. And when 400 or 500 of the most disenfranchised people in America stayed in the streets of Ferguson for 6 weeks, didn't leave even when tanks came, the whole country is different. So if 20 million people did that for 6 weeks, that's impossible would be possible now. And all kinds of legislation and policy and other things has to follow on that. But courageous action, public action is part of it. So in that spirit, folks from Black Lives Matter and Native Lives Matter led a dramatic against these pipelines in November. To honor one of the people got arrested and that happened. Follow-up action coming up in Superior, Wisconsin. Actually, a dinner and feast and spiritual event first. Action that probably won't result in arrest, but is another public action in Superior after that on January 24th. So one is we have to reach out to people that know how to lead and leadership in this, and then we have to follow when they invite us. So we invite you all to come on up.
Thank you. Buffalo Springfield, something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. Some of you know that song. So we have to define it clearly. I know I have to go faster, but we've got 20 minutes. Okay, would you one more question and then okay, Larry? Yeah.
I wanted to have one said before because studying this intergenerational. There's one other key piece they did talking to people that matters. It's not just conversations, but it's emotional conversations. They stopped talking about gay marriage as a right and talk about it as love and an expression of love. And so one of the things that when you have these conversations to change people is figuring out a way to connect with them emotionally, not necessarily on the
I just think that's especially important. I mean, it's important in all the relationship building and movement building that we're doing, but especially when forming some of the relationships that we were just talking about with groups that we rarely see as like natural ally partnerships, that we need to go into those spaces, not trying to just push our agenda, not just trying to convince someone that change is the biggest issue that we face, and really having an open conversation about values, about like what are the places where we share an interest, and that's where we work together. So that's just my piece on the importance of that sort of conversation in tougher relationship building.
Catherine Hayhoe, Hayhoe, Catherine Hayhoe. Look at her website. We've got videos of her, and you will see this as the biggest opportunity to have really enriching conversations around this really, really important issue. Is Andrew here? Andrew, where are you? Oh, great. Would you come up here for a minute? Yeah. Didn't see you. You were just, well, you can come up here too. So we're going to break into, you're going to take the question that you couldn't ask directly to the person in a moment and be able to talk to you. But Andrew is going to be talking about saving you some money. So I'm giving Andrew, how many of you are doing WindSource? How many have no idea what WindSource is? All right, here's my story of the day. Edina has 23,000 homes. 79 are doing WindSource.
Oh, wow.
79. This is my electric bill. I pay 100% WindSource. That means I'm kind of off the grid with my electric bill. Last month, I paid $6.88, and I got back a credit of $5.01. So I paid about $1.50 to be off the grid because I'm supporting WindSource.
It's per kilowatt hour.
All you have to do is check a box, and then you decide 20%, 50%, 80%. So Andrew and Will are going to meet with people to hand out this. There you go. And they're going to meet right over here because they got a bunch of materials. Andrew's got a ton of information, and I'll bet Will does too, but I haven't heard from him. So you can take this. Don't show. I should keep my book. I don't want to be blind or low. Okay, Andrew, could you camp out over there? And now, Margaret, you can answer your question. Margaret, go ahead. Margaret is the owner of Buddy, who's been circulating.
So, and in here tonight. I just have to say, kind of a tag to an emotional conversation. For me, it's just so much about planet. It's about earth, it's about nature. It's about so important to all. You know, to that conversation. If we don't pay attention, if we don't listen, if we don't, care. It's like looking at the So that conversation just really needs echoing for that. So important.
And Margaret, where are our Stillwater people? Here they are.
We're Shoreview.
Shoreview, yes, but you're in that group. Do you know these folks?
Yeah.
So make sure, yeah, and Mary also. So this is the time now we want people to connect and decide what are my next action steps. Catherine's got a great idea to get a huge petition signed on the burner. So I know that you're going to want to meet with Mayra. Did I do it right? Mayra. Great. Would you meet in that corner?
Yes.
Would that be okay? And then did you want to meet with Kevin and Maria, the three of you? Or do you want to?
We'll team up. We should have Minneapolis.
All right, Minneapolis is going to meet in that corner to talk about burner, incinerator. What other issues? Do you want to say anything else about what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, just really quick too. I have the numbers of the 6 council members that are on the Transportation and Public Works Committee. That it's crucial to have their offices be flooded with phone calls, urging them to support Eureka as the recycling contract for the city.
You can call it if you're not in their ward.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, don't move yet because we don't want to start the thing. Maria and Kevin, what are you guys going to be dealing with, and where do you want to meet?
So yeah, we're going to talk about these campaigns to keep it in the ground, so the divestment, stopping the pipeline, and all that, and a bunch of organizations get involved in to do that. Why don't we meet just here under the Minnesotans for Climate Action banner.
At that table. And Rose, what is your topic going to be on regeneration and getting our people to take care of our own yards as well as the whole planet?
How to work on drawing down carbon into the soil in a way that we can do that as individuals as well as affect policy.
And do you want to meet over by the table with a pretty cloth on it? And then Keiko, and we've got all these solar people. I'm sure everyone's dying to get involved in community solar. Can you stand up and tell us a little bit about Linden Hills Power and Light and what you're going to be talking about?
I am the Power and Light, which is neighborhood grassroots nonprofit organization that work on carbon footprint reduction in our community. So we work on waste reduction, energy efficiency, alternative. We are currently on a community solar project right here in Linden Hills. So, we give a brief primer on community solar in general, some specifics on our project if anyone's interested in learning more about the Linden Hills Community Solar Project, but also just the community solar, what it is in general. So I don't know corner class.
I think going out to the foosball area might be a good idea. But and then Julie, would you say something about Sunshare and Dana and then Community Solar, and I don't know your name, Mohammed, about the right, and that's working with Timothy, and they're doing the one in Edina, Mary, this group for the public works building. Okay, quick, just quick.
I'm Julie Ritzler. I was Sunshare, and we do community solar. Have several projects underway. We are taking subscriptions for a garden that is going to be constructed neighborly. And I don't know how many people are familiar with things that have been going on, but sort of the program was rolled, but it's sort of gone in a slower fashion than a lot of solar developers. However, we are moving forward. We found pathways to permitting, so it's been a really interesting kind of experience, and I'm happy to be a part of that. I've got information if you would like to get contact so that we can sign you up.
And they can see you tomorrow morning at Edina City Hall at 10 o'clock.
Right. League of Women Voters is having a forum in State Hall on the second floor, and I'll be speaking there with my colleague Jenny Miller, and also we'll be hearing a little bit about the Dana garden.
Good. Dana, about 10 seconds.
Sure. I'm from Minnesota, over in Minneapolis, and solar within Excel.
Great. And
the Solar Garden Coalition. It's about 8 to 10 partners at the moment. And we're interested in what it means to have a just community solar garden array.
Okay, thank you. All right, you guys will meet out in the room out there. Yes. Oh, there is a group out there. Okay, so solar in the far corner. Follow Keiko. She's in charge. It's pretty amazing to have 4 solar providers here. And then Joe and Tom, give us a wrap on how business.
Be talking about challenges involved, how you motivate business, how you approach business in this regard. We face special obstacles in our society, the way our economy is organized, compared to, say, a country like Germany. We have a pretty steep slope in getting business really engaged. So we'll be talking about that issues, and Joe and I will both be moderating.
Anything to add?
That the Paris Agreement is a collaboration, it's global collaboration, and business is part of it. It's not just one thing. There's also action implementation, the role of the financial sector, and so there are already goals for business being built in, but not really they fit. So that's part of it.
And you guys are going to meet right here in this area. Did I forget anyone? I think that's it. So we were going to do announcements. The only announcement, quick.
Okay, very quick. So we'll do a breakout, and we get the breakout 3 weeks from tomorrow, January 30th, last month, there'll be people will talk about a lot. You have to make a landscape call. Minneapolis. There'll be an all-day conference at the Carondelet Center, adjacent to the St. Kate's campus, and this will be a conference in which we'll have continuing some of this discussion about what in Paris, policy there, and government there, and goal to from the indigenous environment of the Bemidji. He will also be there possibly with his son Dallas. And a lot of helped us do a support action with son in Dallas to raise money to go to Paris back in September. So this will be part 2 of that conference from Paris. But we're also going to have a room twice the size, tables all over for different organizations to be tabling and talking to people, everything from community solar and then to reformative UN, all kinds of things.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to have these averages. Yeah, right. The website is, well, a flyer table when you leave here. But
see Rebecca.
Sustainable Northland.
Just enjoy passing them out.
Right.
Over. This is Rob. I'm Paul, Mindy, Chuck. A lot of people are involved in Citizen Climate Lobby. We teach people how to be good citizens. We've got our group here. We over 3,000 editors last year, 300 op-ed pieces. It's really quite amazing because we meet every month and then we meet in small groups to meet face-to-face with Keith Ellison, with Eric Paulson, we haven't met with John Klein yet, but everyone else, we build relationships. We're meeting tomorrow in the art room in this building at 11:30. We'd love to have too many people, and then we have to move into this room. We've got a flyer, and Rob, I'll let you talk about where Eden Prairie is going to meet.
And we're also meeting Eden Prairie out along Highway 5 at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church, which is kind of halfway between Kowalski's and the Eden Prairie High School.
And we'll be charting the course for 2016. What are our goals and what we're going to do to get a price on carbon and give you the money. That's basically it. We're going to drive the economy to sustainability and regeneration by doing the right thing with our money. And you know how to do that. Any other quick announcements? I promised announcements.
I got the Tarzan committee with the Sierra Club North Star chapter late February or early March. Look for it. The details coming up. We hope to have a of the Institute for Sustainability on getting completely off carbon and fossil fuel and what a future without carbon fuel energy sourcing would look like.
Yeah. Vote matters, and this is caucus time. This is not a fundraiser, but we have some expenses. If you could put $1 or $2 in the pot right behind Greg Neal, that would be great. Break-in, you have to do it short.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, just a show of hands. Who is either come to the January 30th event that Saga has strongly needing to go.
Great. Yeah. No, don't leave. Go talk.